we should have a finite period, a finite budget approved by the National Assembly into law. We should have government on a quarterly basis come to the Nigerian people and say this is how far we have succeeded in the implementation of the Appropriation Act. My view is that for greater clarity, for greater transparency, a finite period, January to December, is the way to go. And government has already in their advocacy, for a January to December year end, they have also mentioned that it makes for ease of accounting, it makes for transparency of the budgeting process. So it is rather disappointing that yet again we seem to have slipped on that target. If this budget had gotten in 1st of October, then the Nigerian people would have been able to apply pressure onto the National Assembly to ensure that latest 31st of December, the budget is passed and we start to run. So it is really for the purposes of clarity that I feel a January to December budget cycle is preferred.
You know, Mr. Rotimi, taking up on some of the assumptions and the projections for this 2018 budget, if we look at the Naira against the dollar, it's at 305. Do you see this as a problem?
Thank you very much, Gimba. I think you have raised an excellent question. You know, a few times that I've been on this program, we've talked about foreign exchange, especially when we had a multiplicity of rates, and it was very difficult to achieve stability in that sector. Now, fortunately for everybody, in April of this year, the central bank introduced the Investors and Exporters FX window, otherwise known as NAFEX. NAFEX is largely a market-determined place where buyers and sellers of foreign exchange can interact, and market forces can essentially determine the value of the Naira. This is what we have consistently advocated for. So now we have seen some degree of convergence between the NAFEX rate, or the import and export window FX rate, of about 360, and a convergence between that and even the parallel market rate. So you almost have one major benchmark that the bulk of transactions revolve around. So the question then is, of what use is the official benchmark of 305 to a dollar? How many people transact business in Nigeria today at 305? My sense would be, since we have achieved some degree of convergence, it means that in effect, the exchange rate of the Nigerian Naira to the US dollar is, for all intents and purposes, around 360. So on what basis is government budgeting on 305? What it simply means is this: we will sell crude oil, we will earn foreign exchange, but we will convert that foreign exchange at 305 instead of converting it at 360 and earning an additional 55 Naira on every dollar we're changing. So my view is that government needs to convert its oil export proceeds at 360, earn more Naira, and possibly reduce the deficit, because the 2018 budget yet again has another deficit of 2 trillion Naira, which will be funded by Nigerians.
Yes, funding that budget seems to be a major concern, because if you look at 3.5% of GDP growth, and we're looking at an inflation rate of 12.4%, if you have to put that side by side, does it really tally?
Well, inflation is another major indicator. So look back into history. For the last 5 or 6 months, we've seen consistent, albeit gradual, minimal, marginal reduction in inflation. So that in itself is a good thing, it's a positive. The negative in there is that if you x-ray the inflation numbers, you will see that food inflation, which is perhaps one of, if not the most critical, has consistently been going up. So my sense is there is still a lot of work we need to do in expanding our agricultural production base, in expanding our storage and processing facilities and transport facilities, so that all of this harvest gets to the Nigerian people at a price they can afford. That is when you will see inflation starting to come down. So for government to expect, we're at 15 point something percent inflation rate, a gradual decline in the course of 2018 can actually take us to 12.4. So I have no arguments with the projected inflation rate.
Okay, so if we look at the 2.3 million barrels per day oil production estimates, and considering that there seems to be some kind of problems that is coming out of the Niger Delta where this oil is gotten from, what are your expectations?
Well, I am filled with a great deal of anxiety.